Right now, you're listening to the Azeem Digital Asks podcast, the podcast where I, Azeem, talk to some of the top marketers in the industry, find out everything about them, how they got to where they are today, and more importantly, sharing some really useful marketing tips that will help everybody listening to this become better marketers. Stay tuned for another great episode. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Azeem Digital Asks podcast. My guest today is the brilliant Sophie Gibson, who is an SEO strategist at Rise at 7. She also describes herself as the queen of penguin gifts and a small business runner at Penguin Patrol. Sophie, thank you very much for joining me.
You're welcome. Lovely to be here.
How's your day going so far?
Yeah, pretty good. Just, average days in SEO looking at spreadsheets.
Standard. Quick one before we get into it. What time did you wake up this morning?
I woke up at 7:45-ish.
I was hoping to cast you out and say, so you didn't rise at 7, but you beat me to it.
Just a bit past. It's quite funny because I'm very much not a morning person, so I did find it slightly funny that it's rise at 7 when I'm more of a mid-afternoon kind of gal.
Right, let's get into it. Before we find out a little bit more about you and your background, I wanted to ask you what your least favourite food was as a child, and if you still hate it, or do you love it now?
So my least favorite food was salmon. Like the smell, the taste, it's all horrible. I tried it as a teenager and I was told it doesn't really taste of anything, but I completely disagree. I really don't like it, and I still don't like it to this day. There's a few foods which I've gotten over. Mushrooms, I now can't get enough of them. Bring me all the mushrooms. Used to hate those, but salmon still not got on there.
I absolutely love salmon, but it's not something that you could eat in an office because it will just take over the whole floor with smell.
Yeah, definitely don't want to be the co-worker microwaving fish in the office for sure.
No. Anyway, this is not a fish podcast. This is a marketing podcast. So let's get into it. Tell me, Sophie, when did you realize that marketing was going to be the career for you?
So I think it actually started after I started like a marketing exec role, and I kind of realized that I really hated social media. So I think that was the point that I was. So I started in it, but I really got into doing the website side. I started running a website for a small retailer, um, and like I really loved doing that side of it. So adding all the products, sorting out orders, putting new products on the website, making sure that people could find it. So that's kind of when I first realized that that's what really, yeah, I enjoyed that side of things. And then then looking at analytics and SEO, and then started digging into the numbers, and I just really loved looking at the data and finding issues and trying to figure out what it all meant and if I could do anything about it. So yeah, that's kind of when I was like, oh, this is kind of the direction I really wanted to go in, because I actually did a lot of art and design stuff. So at college, I was always doing design. I actually did graphic design at university. So like I was always kind of a creative person, but then I kind of realized that you could combine like the numbers and the data side with that creative side, but without having to actually design stuff, for sure. So yeah, that's kind of like when I realized that this is the avenue that I definitely want to go down.
Nice, a very varied background then, which leads me very nicely to the next question. So, if you could go back to when you first began in the industry with all of the information and knowledge that you've got now, what advice do you think that you'd give to yourself?
So yeah, I think that um, just just do stuff if it interests you. I think that's one of the kind of biggest takeaways that I'd kind of give. So just being able to jump in and just, if you've got an idea for something, just go ahead and do it, because there'll always be some kind of benefit for it, even if it's just personal learning, even if it's just got a good idea that you want to do and you just approach your management about going ahead with it. So that's kind of like how I did most of my learning, because I was the only marketing person in my like first job out of uni. So it was just me. The owners didn't really know much about digital, um, like in of itself. So I kind of just went to them with saying, "Oh, I'd love to do this. I think you need a new website," because they were on a very old, like non-responsive template, which was horrible to use on mobile. So um, I literally just put a proposal together and said, "This is what I want to do," and they said, "Yeah." So I think just being able to, think ahead, um, and just approach people with what you want to do, I think it really can take you far. And I think also, trying to not put as much stock in what other people think. I think that's always easily said but hard done. But I think that's another piece of advice that I think could benefit new people in an industry.
Awesome. Some really useful tips that you've shared there, and also some things that you've learned throughout your career as well. Really useful. I think the listeners will definitely take some value from it. Are you able to share then who you would say has been a big inspiration for you in the industry?
Um, so yeah, it's been really weird kind of coming across this industry because I didn't really know that SEO was an industry when I first started out. So it's really interesting to kind of, after going agency side, finding out that there's this big, collection of people that are all, so willing to help. So, for example, Arij Abwali, starting the Women in Tech SEO community, that was like really great inspiration. There was a place that I could go to, talk to other people in like similar positions. I also really loved Roxana Stingu, who absolutely is the regex queen, and she knows everything about that. She's been so inspirational with lots of information on how to sort out my regex, because it's something I always come across, and you forget it every single time. Um, you always have to go back to the beginning. I find with regex, as soon as you've gone a couple of weeks without it, you need to look it all up again, or at least I do. So
Yeah,
and I think just the people I work with in general. So, everyone is so willing to give you advice and support and cheer you on. So I work with Jerry White and Matt Jones, and they're really great at just, putting a bit of confidence behind you, and, willing to give you a bit of prod and push you in the right direction. It's been really, really great.
good stuff. I'm fully in agreement with you there on the regex stuff. I think anybody who gets complex regex right first time around deserves like some kind of a prize, because I always have to just make a tiny, tiny error in the formula somewhere and then go back, pull what is left of my hair out and do it again. So yeah, fair play to you there. I wanted to ask you then, what's been the biggest challenge that you've got with your current role now at Rise at Seven, and how are you overcoming it?
I think it's a very kind of typical one when it comes to client work, but getting the SEO recommendations that you come up with from the technical side actually implemented, I think it's always a really hard one to do. There's so much what you can do to kind of help do that, putting business cases together, making sure that you've got, actual bottom line figures. Can you tie some revenue to your recommendations? Um, you know, can you easily communicate the issues to, developers and the actual client to be able for them to be able to understand it, and then get the next steps in place to, put a fix in there. It's always difficult. There's so many different roadblocks that you can come up to um, on that front, and it's, sometimes it's like a breeze. You can just get some, tickets in, stuff gets sorted out straight away, and then on other occasions it's, a very slow process. And the more experienced you get, I think at SEO, there's still no guarantee that you're able to help get those stuff implemented.
Definitely. It sounds like you're doing really well though, so fair play and long may it continue. I wanted to then follow up about COVID and how COVID has affected you professionally and how you responded.
Yeah. So I think I've been incredibly lucky because I was still able to actually start a new job, despite it was in the middle of COVID. 2 weeks in, I
Wow.
actually started at Rise. So that was a bit of a shock, like moving to a brand new role and starting that remotely. Um, that was definitely quite a challenge, just because there's so many questions that you have that come up, and you could either need constant calls, or you're spending a lot of time messaging people, using Slack or whatever chat thing that you're using at the moment. But yeah, jumping into all of that and trying to figure out how to best do stuff and match it up with how stuff's being done, learning new things, processes. Yeah, it's definitely a challenge when you're doing it all remotely rather than in person, because it's so easy just to point at a screen and pick up what you need to do from that and just ask questions over a desk. But when you're doing it remotely, it does take a lot of kind of time away from your day to day.
Yeah, completely agree with you. You mentioned a little bit there, you touched on it about how you're adapting and learning. I wanted to just follow up on that a little bit. So, how are you continuing to learn and gaining knowledge in order to sort of stay on top or in line with the industry?
Yeah, it's always continuous progress, but I think mostly I love listening to podcasts. I think that's the easiest way for me to absorb stuff and new information, just because you stick it on and episodes play. There's so many amazing podcasts like this one, and you've got the Brighton SEO podcast, and they tend to put up all of the old talks, and I found that really useful. So I could put the podcast on whilst listening to a talk, whilst watching the slide share of the person that put it out. So if there was anything that you missed, you could actually still catch up. It was later down the line from when it all got added onto there, but all of the fringe events, they're all on the podcast as well. So just learning about different bits there. That was yeah, I mean that's kind of my um, first go-to way of keeping on top of stuff. And I think just making sure you've got a bit of time to read some articles. So Content King are really putting out some great guides at the moment, and you've got Sam Underwood and Oliver Mason's blogs. There's always some really interesting articles there to read, just stuff to really make you think, and as well just asking questions in kind of day-to-day work and saying, is there a way to do X, Y, or Z? There's like so much stuff that you can do and that you might not realize that you have the tools to be able to do yourself. But someone else might say, oh, this thing that you want to do is possible just using this API, or have you seen this Google Sheets formula, which you've never heard of before, and figuring out ways to do stuff like that. So yeah, just making notes to see whether stuff that you can do is possible, and just asking. I think that's the kind of best way to actually get new information and actual ways of doing stuff. The knowledge of that.
Some brilliant tips there and a lot of positives to take away. I wanted to kind of flip that on its head now and talk a little bit about the negatives. So, what would you say in the last 12 months has been the biggest failure for you, and why do you think that it happened?
So yeah, it's a really tough one, but I think maybe not believing in myself more. I think that's kind of like the biggest kind of, I wouldn't say failure, but a biggest misstep that I think um, you can do. Like it's only you that pushes yourself forward. Whereas it does help when you've got a lot of positive people around you. I think not believing in yourself more can really put a damper on things that you'd put your name forward for that you might not necessarily have done before. Because I've found, like, historically, if I've just put myself out there and done something that I didn't quite think I was, ready for, it's always gone well. Like there's no downside, but you always forget about that when you're, you know, thinking about doing X, Y, Z. So, for example, in my first ever marketing role, I actually saw a call for mentors in the digital marketing space for a scheme called Leg Up Social, run by a studio called Paper here in Sheffield. And like, I didn't think I was quite ready. I'd only done like a year or so in a marketing role, so I wasn't, you know, I didn't think I knew everything, but I just thought, you know what, I'm just going to put myself forward for that. And, I got to meet so many great people. You realize that, yes, you do have the knowledge. So I think, yeah, not believing in yourself can really hold you back unnecessarily. So, but it's such a tough one. I think there's no point in time that that gets any easier, or you actually, get to a point where you think, oh yes, I'll do X, Y, or Z. You'll just put yourself out there because you think you can. I think it's always something in the kind of back of your mind. So that's where it comes. That's why it's really beneficial to find a community, or having supportive co-workers, finding a community like Tech SEO Women, just finding a group that you can chat with, and that they will give you a prod and say yes, you can do it. I think it's always really, really helpful.
Completely agree with you. Some really useful advice there as well, and throughout the episode. Let's talk about some of the things that you're working on right now then. Obviously, I appreciate client confidentiality, but are you able to share with the listeners some exciting things that you're working on?
Well, yes. So what I can say that I'm working on a blog post to go with my first ever Brain SEO talk. So I'm talking this, well, whenever this podcast comes out, it's on the 2nd of October. So I'm doing a talk on how to audit your competitors with free tools and data. So that was kind of a really big deal, I suppose. I didn't put myself forward until very last minute. They had a few spots open up. Um, so with a few prods from other people, I just put myself forward and actually got picked. So that was really, really great. Obviously, it was a bit of a shame because it was meant to be in summer, and now it's being moved and it's all online. But I'm still really excited to be able to do that. I have something. It's very, very scary, but the video is all recorded. It's submitted. There's nothing more that I can do. So I'm just writing a blog post to actually to go with it.
Nice. Yeah, completely echo your feelings there. I'm looking at the numbers for Brighton SEO, which by the time this comes out, it'll be the same week. So the numbers look insane. But like you said, it's all done now. I'm glad it's recorded because it's done. It's out the way.
Yeah.
Let's talk about swapping roles then. So if you had the chance to ask yourself a question that I've not asked you already, what do you think it would be?
Well, it would be to I'd ask me some more about the penguins, because as you mentioned at the beginning, in my, I think it's Twitter bio, it just says that I'm the queen of penguin gifts.
Yeah, so tell us more about the penguins.
So the reason why that's in my Twitter bio is because I won a kind of like Twitter competition talking about businesses that every Wednesday there's a little competition that goes out. You can enter if you just put Queen of, and so what I do is I run a penguin gift shop. So everything is penguin themed, and we've got cuddly toys, stationery, baby wear, all sorts of stuff like that. So yeah, I started a penguin gift store alongside my first ever job. So just for fun, just because I absolutely love penguins, I actually have an Instagram account for a soft toy penguin that I got from the deep in Hull, and made an Instagram account for him because of course, why not? And one of my co-workers at the time said, "Oh, do you sell penguins through this?" And I was like, "No, I do not." So I was like, "But I'm gonna now." So I just decided to set up my own like e-commerce website. Not really, because I'd managed one's website before. I was like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" Um, Found a few retailers, and yeah, I'm now in my third year of selling penguins on the penguinpatrol.co.uk if you want to have a look. And it's been really kind of exciting and fun thing to do. I think it's definitely helped in, being able to approach clients differently because, you know, I know what it's like to run an e-commerce website, and as well just in the industry in general, being able to, you know, work on, you know, a side project or at least a website doing all sorts of technical improvements and just learning the ins and out of actually the day-to-day work that comes with running a website has been, you know, such a great learning opportunity.
I bet. Awesome. Sadly, we are nearly coming to the end of this podcast, which is a shame. Really enjoyed this. I wanted to ask you then, right before we go, if you could share one quick fire marketing tip or a piece of advice to the listeners that would help them to do their jobs better, what would that tip be?
So I think being able to ask for help when you need it, or even just asking if people have an opinion on a certain item, like just being able to be willing to ask that question can really help you, because someone will definitely know either a, a way that you haven't thought of doing something before. So yeah, I think just being willing to ask, and I think putting yourself forward for things as well, that you might not be necessarily ready for. It's a bit scary, but definitely always worthwhile.
Love that. Great piece of advice. Thank you very much for sharing that. Right before you go, then, I ask everybody this. I'll probably end up making a playlist. When you need to get deep into maximum productivity zone, what is your go-to song, artist, playlist? What's in your ears?
Okay, so at the moment, it is Ed Shikari's new album, which is Nothing Is True and Everything Is Possible. There's a song on it called Tina, which I absolutely love. It's very noisy, and definitely something I just need to put in my ears and blast out when I'm trying to get some deep dive technical analysis stuff done.
Nice. I definitely need to check this out. So I'll tell you that today I started my day listening to Kill Switch Engage at 4 a.m. and it's definitely helped me to power through the rest of this day because I had a bad sleep. That really helped.
Yeah, I love Pill Switch Engage, so yeah, they're definitely a good one to get you pumped up.
Yeah, you can go from feeling incredibly tired to, right, I am ready for the day. We could talk about this all day long, but sadly, we have to end the podcast there. Right before you go, Sophie, how can people find out more about you? How can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Sophie Gibson. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me at the penguinpatrol.co.uk and the Rise at 7 site as well, riseat7.com.
Awesome. Sophie, thank you very much for being a brilliant guest. Best of luck with your Brighton SEO talk this week. I will let you have the last word on this podcast and I'll shut up now.
No, thank you so much. It's been so fun to talk about myself for an hour.
So that was another great episode in the bag. I'm really enjoying hearing from some brilliant people in this industry. If you enjoyed this podcast, please follow me on Spotify. Please leave a rating on Apple Podcasts or whichever platform you are using. Tell a friend to tell a friend, and hopefully see you for the next episode.